My toys, clothes, and electronics kept disappearing, and my brother always said I was the one losing them. I was 12 when I first noticed things going missing. My favorite action figure, the one I'd spent months saving up for with birthday cash, was gone from my shelf one day. I tore my room apart looking for it, convinced I'd misplaced it somewhere. When I asked my brother, 5 years older and always acting like he had everything figured out, he just shrugged and said I was careless. I believed him. I mean, he was the responsible one, the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I figured I must have been the problem, too scatterbrained to keep track of my own stuff. Over the next few years, it kept happening. My trading cards, the ones I'd spent hours organizing into binders, started thinning out. I'd notice a rare holographic card missing here and there, and when I brought it up, my brother would roll his eyes and say I probably traded it away and forgot. My parents bought his story every time, lecturing me about being more responsible. I'd sit there at the dinner table, my stomach twisting with frustration, while they praised him for his grades or his part-time job at the local burger joint. Meanwhile, I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. How could I keep misplacing things? My clothes, hoodies, sneakers, even a jacket I got for Christmas, would vanish from my closet. My old Game Boy, the one I'd played for hours under the covers, was gone one summer. Each time, my brother had the same excuse. You're so messy, you probably left it somewhere. And every time my parents nodded along, telling me to stop blaming him for my mistakes. By the time I was 15, I was keeping a mental checklist of everything I owned, terrified something else would disappear. I'd started hiding my favorite things. My earbuds, a sketchbook I loved doodling in, under my mattress or in the back of my closet. But even that wasn't enough. My brother had this knack for finding my stuff like he knew exactly where to look. I'd come home from school and find my hiding spots disturbed, my things gone. Once, I found an empty spot where my limited edition comic book used to be. I'd saved up for months to buy it at a convention, and it was gone. When I confronted him, he laughed it off, saying I was paranoid and needed to chill. My parents, as usual, took his side, telling me I was too old to be throwing tantrums over toys. I remember sitting in my room that night, staring at the empty space on my shelf, feeling this hot, helpless anger bubbling up. I wasn't just losing stuff, I was losing trust in myself. What I didn't know then was that my brother was selling my things. My trading cards, my games, even the little gifts I'd gotten from our grandparents, he was turning them into cash. I found out later he was using the money to impress his girlfriend, taking her out to fancy dinners or buying her stuff to seem like some big shot. He'd always been the charming one, the guy who could talk his way out of anything. He'd tell our parents I was jealous of his success, that I was making up stories to tear him down, and they believed him, every single time. I'd try to explain, my voice shaking, but they'd look at me like I was the problem, like I was the one stirring up drama. It got to the point where I stopped bringing it up. What was the point? No one was listening. When I was 17, something happened that changed everything. My grandpa, who'd always had a soft spot for me, gave me a pair of high-end headphones for my birthday. They were sleek, noise-canceling, the kind of thing I'd never have been able to afford on my own. I was obsessed with them, wearing them every chance I got, careful to keep them in their case when I wasn't using them. For a week, they were my pride and joy. Then, one day, I came home from school, and they were gone. The case was still there, sitting on my desk, but it was empty. My heart sank. I knew it was him. I stormed into his room, demanding answers, but he just smirked and said I must have left them at school. I was furious, but what could I do? My parents were at work, and I had no proof. That night, I lay awake, replaying every moment I'd spent with those headphones, wondering how I could have been so stupid to let them out of my sight. I was done being gaslit. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started watching my brother more closely, paying attention to his routines. He'd leave the house at weird times, always with a backpack slung over his shoulder, acting like he was just hanging out with friends. One afternoon, I followed him. I kept my distance, ducking behind cars in the parking lot of our apartment complex, my heart pounding like I was in some kind of spy movie. I watched him walk into a pawn shop a few blocks away. I waited outside, my hands sweaty, until he came out. Through the window, I saw him hand over my headphones, the ones I'd gotten just a week ago. The guy behind the counter handed him a wad of cash, and my brother stuffed it in his pocket like it was nothing. I was shaking with rage as I followed him back home. When I confronted him in the driveway, I didn't hold back. I yelled, asking why he'd do this, how he could steal from me and lie to my face for years. He didn't even flinch. He stepped closer, his voice low and mean, and told me to back off. When I didn't, he shoved me hard, and before I could catch myself, his fist connected with my cheek. The pain was sharp, but the shock hit harder. He leaned in and said if I told anyone, he'd tell our parents I was using drugs and plant proof in my room to back it up. I stumbled back, my face throbbing, and watched him walk inside like nothing had happened. I stood there, frozen, feeling smaller than I ever had. Update 1. The next morning, I woke up with a bruise blooming on my cheek. I tried covering it with makeup, but it was still noticeable, a purplish mark that stung every time I touched it. I avoided looking at my brother across the breakfast table, keeping my head down while he chatted with our parents like everything was fine. I felt like I was drowning in my own silence, too scared to speak up but too angry to let it go. I went to school, my mind racing. I couldn't focus in class, replaying the moment he hit me, the way he'd threatened to frame me. I kept thinking about those headphones, about all the things he'd taken over the years. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was desperate to make it stop. When I got home, I noticed something weird. My parents were acting off, quieter than usual. My mom kept glancing at me, her eyes lingering on my face. I brushed it off, thinking she was just annoyed about something else. But that evening, while I was doing homework, my dad called me into the living room. My brother was there too, slouched on the couch, looking annoyed. My parents sat me down and asked about the bruise. I froze. My brother's eyes were on me, daring me to say something. I mumbled that I tripped and hit my face on my desk, but I could tell they weren't buying it. My mom's voice was soft but firm when she asked if I was sure. I nodded, my throat tight, and excused myself to my room. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the pawn shop, the cash in his pocket, the way he'd looked at me like I was nothing. I started going through my room, checking for anything else that might have gone missing. That's when I found it. A receipt crumpled up in the trash can by my desk. It was from the pawn shop, dated the day before, listing my headphones and a price. My hands shook as I held it. This was proof, real proof, but I didn't know what to do with it. If I showed my parents, would they believe me? Or would he twist it somehow, make it my fault again? I tucked the receipt under my mattress, my mind spinning with what to do next. The next day, I decided to skip school and go back to the pawn shop. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I just wanted to see if my headphones were still there, or maybe I needed to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. The guy behind the counter recognized me when I mentioned the headphones. He said they'd already been sold but showed me the record of the transaction. My brother's name was right there, along with his signature. I felt this weird mix of relief and nausea. I wasn't imagining things. It was real. I asked the guy if he'd seen my brother before, and he nodded, saying he came in every few weeks with stuff to sell. Games, collectibles, even clothes. My stomach churned. How much of my life had he pawned off? When I got home, I was ready to confront him again, receipt in hand. But something stopped me. I remembered his threat, the way he'd hit me without hesitation. I was scared, not just of him, but of what he could convince our parents to believe. Instead, I started keeping a journal, writing down everything I could remember about the things that had gone missing, the times I'd seen him leave with his backpack, the pawn shop visit. I hid it in a locked box under my bed, along with the receipt. I didn't know how to use it yet, but it felt like a lifeline, something to hold on to when everything else felt like it was slipping away. Update 2. A few weeks later, things took a turn I didn't see coming. My parents started acting even stranger. They were whispering to each other when they thought I wasn't listening, and my mom kept asking me random questions about school, my friends, how I was feeling. I thought maybe they were worried about the bruise, which had faded but still lingered as a faint shadow. I kept my head down, avoiding my brother as much as I could. He'd been staying out late, coming home with new clothes or gadgets, acting like nothing had happened. Every time I saw him, my chest tightened, but I kept quiet, biding my time. One night, my parents called a family meeting. My brother and I sat on opposite ends of the couch, the tension thick enough to choke on. My dad didn't waste time. He pulled out his laptop and opened a video. My heart stopped when I realized what it was. Security footage from our living room. I didn't even know we had cameras. The video showed my brother going through my backpack while I was at school, pulling out my sketchbook and a pair of sneakers I'd just gotten. Another clip showed him slipping something into his bag before leaving the house. My parents paused the video and looked at him. His face went pale, but he tried to laugh it off, saying it was just borrowing, that he'd planned to give it back. Couldn't believe it. My parents had installed cameras without telling us, all because they'd noticed the bruise on my face and started questioning things. They'd seen enough to realize something was wrong, and instead of confronting me or him directly, they'd set up the cameras to catch the truth. I felt this rush of relief, like I could finally breathe, but it was mixed with dread. What would happen now? My brother started spinning a story, saying I'd given him permission to take my stuff, that I was overreacting. But my parents weren't having it. My mom's voice was shaking when she asked why he'd been selling my things. She'd found a pawn shop receipt in his room. My receipt, the one I'd hidden under my mattress. He'd gone through my stuff again, found it and kept it like some kind of trophy. I broke. I started crying, spilling everything. The years of missing toys, clothes, games, the headphones, the pawn shop, the threats. My parents listened, their faces crumpling as I talked. My brother sat there, silent, his jaw tight. For the first time, he didn't have an excuse. My dad told him to pack a bag and stay with our aunt for a while. They needed time to figure out what to do. I watched him leave, his backpack slung over his shoulder, and felt this strange mix of victory and emptiness. I'd won, but at what cost? Update 3. The weeks after my brother left were quiet, but not the peaceful kind. The house felt empty, like something vital had been carved out of it. My parents were devastated, grappling with the fact that they'd missed what was happening for so long. They apologized to me over and over, their voices heavy with guilt. I wanted to be angry at them for not believing me sooner, but I couldn't. They were trying to make it right. They took me to the pawn shop and we managed to buy back a few of my things. A couple of trading cards, my sketchbook, even one of my old hoodies. It wasn't much, but holding those things again felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. I started going through my journal, reading back over the years of things I'd lost. It was more than just stuff. It was the trust, the security, the feeling of being safe in my own home. I decided to do something with it. I wasn't sure what, but I needed to turn that pain into something else. I started sketching again, pouring my feelings into drawings, dark, swirling images of betrayal, but also brighter ones, scenes of me standing taller, stronger. I posted a few online, not expecting much, but people started commenting, sharing their own stories of family drama, of feeling invisible. It was like finding a community I didn't know I needed. Then came the plot twist I never expected. My brother reached out, not to me but to our parents. He'd been staying with our aunt, and she'd made him get a job to pay her rent. Apparently, he'd started talking to her about everything. Why he'd done it, how he'd gotten caught up in trying to impress his girlfriend, how he'd justified it to himself. He sent me a letter through our parents. I didn't want to read it at first, but curiosity got the better of me. It wasn't an apology, not really, just him trying to explain. He said he'd felt pressure to be perfect, to keep up with his friends, and my stuff was an easy way to get quick cash. He didn't mention hitting me, didn't mention the threats. I wasn't sure how to feel. Part of me wanted to scream, but another part felt this tiny flicker of pity. He wasn't the golden child anymore. He was just a guy who'd messed up bad. I didn't write back. Instead, I started selling my sketches online. It wasn't about the money. It was about taking control, proving to myself I could build something out of the mess he'd left. People loved them, and I started getting commissions. It was small at first, but it grew. I'd spend hours drawing, losing myself in the lines, turning my anger and hurt into something beautiful. My parents noticed the change in me, how I was carrying myself differently. They started checking in more, really listening when I talked. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Final update. It's been a year since everything went down. My brother's still living with our aunt, working a steady job now. He's tried reaching out a few times, but I'm not ready to talk. Maybe one day, but not yet. I've been focusing on me, my art, my life. I saved up enough from my commissions to buy a new pair of headphones, better than the ones he sold. When I put them on, it's like I'm shutting out the past, just for a little while. The biggest twist came a few months ago. I got an email from a local gallery. They'd seen my sketches online and wanted to feature them in a showcase for young artists. I thought it was a prank at first, but it was real. I walked into that gallery opening, saw my drawings framed on the walls, and felt this rush I can't even describe. People were there, talking about my work, asking me about the stories behind it. I didn't tell them everything, just that they came from a place of rebuilding, of finding myself again. My parents were there, tearing up, proud in a way I hadn't seen before. I don't know what's next for me and my brother. I don't know if we'll ever be close again. But I do know I'm not that kid who felt invisible anymore. I've got my art, my voice, and a sense of who I am that no one can take away. My stuff might have disappeared, but I found something better, myself.